take her as payment for the debt. He turned it down at first, but the moment his gaze met hers, the whole world shifted. Gareth's trek to the remote outpost started with no greater thrill than chasing down a long-overdue obligation. Still, as he entered the charged assembly where Orland was hemmed in by a pair of tribal fighters, he saw that things had unraveled way past a mere money squabble. Orland, a fellow known for his web of deceptions, hasty bargains, and even swifter getaways, appeared rattled down to his bones, and Gareth first figured it was remorse over the unsettled sum. But then the fighters shoved someone into view, a woman on her knees, wrists tied, her bearing straight and unyielding even as the cords dug into her flesh. Her beaded attire alive with bold designs that whispered of heritage and strength, not surrender. The fighter announced her name as Aya, seized by Orland during his rash incursion onto their territory, a frantic bid to dodge the messes he'd stirred up elsewhere. Orland sputtered defenses, insisting she'd been mere security, a ploy just to stall for time. But Gareth felt a wave of revulsion at hearing a person bartered like goods. He shot down the idea right away when Orland floated that she could square the account. Gareth stated flat out that no sum of coin could excuse such a deal. Aya's eyes rose then, keen and steady, appraising him with a look that carried no begging, no yielding, just a calm evaluation, as if she were quietly weighing whether this outsider who dismissed the proposal so resolutely was really unlike the one who wielded her as a pawn. The fighters, though, insisted on amends for both Orland's shortfall and the shame he'd inflicted. Gareth suddenly found himself tangled in a haggle he hadn't sought, but turning tail would leave Aya exposed to being shuttled among needy rogues and furious clansmen. There was something in her poise, her quiet defiance against looking shattered, that urged Gareth onward. He positioned himself between her and the fighters, volunteering to shoulder Orland's full burden and vowing to settle it by daybreak, drawing on the wares stowed in his wagon train. The fighters paused, weighing it, then agreed, with the caveat that Aya would stay in Gareth's charge until the tally was cleared. Gareth knelt to loosen her bonds, the fibers rigid from endless strain, and as they dropped free, Aya offered no gratitude, no flinch, just held that piercing, judging stare that left him feeling exposed, yet somehow worthy. She rose to her full height, weary as she was, grime etched into her skin, yet her aura carried a quiet authority, rooted deep. In that instant, Gareth knew release alone wouldn't suffice. She merited transparency, agency, respect, the very elements Orland had stolen from her. As they made their way to his wagons, Gareth murmured sorrow for the mess she'd been pulled into, but Aya replied simply that regrets held no weight without bold steps to back them up. He respected the crisp edge of her reply. She wasn't bitter, nor mellowed by ease, just constant. Gareth passed the following hours rifling through prized items, readying them for the dawn handover, while Aya watched in thoughtful quiet, now and then posing sharp queries about why he'd claimed her burden as his own.
Gareth replied with candor. Something in how she carried herself, even bound, had made it unthinkable to view her as a trade token. The admission caught him off guard, unearthing a call to duty he hadn't known in ages. Aya's face eased, just a fraction, as if spotting true intent where she'd braced for none from a foreigner. She shared her tale then, how she'd been guarding her kin's borders, how Orland's foolhardy breach sparked a scuffle, and how she'd held back from striking him, even with the opening, only to be overwhelmed when his other troubles closed in. Gareth heard her out, silent, absorbing the heft of her ordeal and the grit woven through every phrase. As darkness deepened into hush, a tentative bond took root between them. Not camaraderie, not pact, but a connection forged in honest reckoning. Gareth grasped that, by first light, he'd either claim her liberty or face the fallout of shortfall. And Aya saw that this man, unlike Orland, prized principle above expedience. When the sky's edge caught the faintest glow, Gareth stood ready. Yet he felt the handover ahead would challenge them both in unforeseen ways. What had launched as a hunt for redress had evolved into something intimately profound. And Gareth sensed that daybreak would shape not just Aya's tomorrow, but the trail his own days would follow hence. As Gareth and Aya approached the rendezvous with the bundled goods, the quiet between them hung thicker, not from suspicion, but from the mutual sense that the next moments would gauge if they could part with their self-respect whole. When the fighters inspected Garrett's haul, herbs sealed in vials, etched alloy trinkets, gems buffed smooth from far-flung bazaars, they soon saw it surpass the due in worth and the labor poured into assembling it. They took the settlement, pronouncing Orland's ledger closed, and officially freed Aya from any reprisal linked to the affair. But rather than hasten back to her clan's grounds, Aya lingered at Gareth's side. He glanced her way in quiet astonishment as the fighters withdrew with a courteous incline. He ventured softly if she'd prefer heading home now, her autonomy reclaimed. And she answered that going back solo felt unfinished, with Orland, the spark of all this disorder, still loose and unmoored. She wouldn't have Gareth fall prey to the man's frantic schemes. Her response kindled warmth in him, appreciation, esteem, perhaps a stir too deep to label just yet. Gareth confessed he shared the unease, aware Orland lurked still, spinning snares at every turn. Their aims converged, so they resolved to pursue him, tracing faint traces toward derelict sheds on the town's fringe. En route, Aya opened up more, recounting her rearing amid the sentinels, the rigor instilled from her earliest days, and the duty awaiting her to shield her folk from outer perils and inner discord alike. Gareth attended closely, not from courtesy alone, but true curiosity, seeing her fortitude as no facade, but the yield of an existence rooted in intent. In kind, he unveiled confessions he seldom voiced, how commerce had once been a worthy road for him, a bridge between realms and bonds between souls, yet had gradually knotted with arrears, strains, and the concessions that erode a fellow's faith in his core. Aya met it not with pity, but a resolute note that a soul's descent wasn't measured by its plunge, but by the will to climb anew. Her insight lingered as they neared the weathered huts. Within one, they cornered Orland at last, wild-eyed and dazed, braced as if for Gareth's wrath over it all. Instead, Gareth faced him evenly, noting the obligation cleared, but the slight to Aya's dignity one he'd have to own up to, face to face. Aya advanced not for vengeance, but for reckoning. Orland conceded he'd yielded to frenzy and frailty, forsaking all decency once dread seized the reins. He expressed remorse not chasing absolution, but because Aya's steadfast bearing barred any falsehood. She took his owning, yet cautioned that his current course would unravel him utterly if he shunned reform. The exchange closed not in blows, but in a flicker across Orland's gaze, a dawning that he'd scraped his existence's nadir. As they quitted the hut, Gareth knew an unexpected peace. The storm kicked up by the debt now seemed mended in a manner riches could never touch. Aya kept pace with him, unbound, unclaimed, simply sovereign, crafted by the paths they'd chosen side by side. She said she'd rejoin her own now, but not as one salvaged, more as one who'd beheld how a person's uprightness might resurface precisely when he spurned a fork that would have tainted him. Gareth inclined his head, honoring her call. Still, a subtle ache bloomed in his breast, like essence ebbing. Ere she went, Aya turned once more and observed that trails frequently intersect for hidden causes, and those who collide amid tempests, well, they may forge ties firmer than language can frame. Gareth observed her fade into the hush, solitary in the serene void. But abandonment? No. Renewal? Yes. The tally he'd written to reclaim had prodded him to reckon his principles, aid one who bent but never snapped, and reclaim a facet of his spirit he'd deemed gone for good. Heading back to his wagons, he carried the echo of Aya's essence to echo long past her silhouette lost to the sands, not as an echo of debt, but as a beacon that one pivotal choice, seized true, can recast a lifetime's arc.